Hello and welcome to an unexpected podcast. My name is Tim, and with me, as always, we have Matt and Rainier and Evan as well. On this week's episode, we're going to be going over a list by Armando, and we're going to go over the profiles for the new Dale models, and we're going to be going over the FAQ that came out as well. So we'll do the list review first. So I will bring that over to Rainier to go over.
And before Rainier actually goes over the list here, I want to point out that Tim looked at Armando and how he spelled his name at the top and goes, "How is this pronounced?" I don't. and then I was like, he spelled it phonetically, just like we asked him to.
Exactly.
It's pronounced Armando. Thanks,
Even
Armando.
when you spoon feed it to me, I can't get it. Everybody, you know what? Just go with the name Tim. I get that one. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm Tim.
Yeah, you're going to pronounce it like Mandalorian or something.
We have a list by Tim, 56 episodes in a row.
Anyway, thanks, Armando, for doing exactly what we asked you to, even if it didn't have the intended effect.
All right, Rainier, go ahead.
Okay, so I see. So we have Armando from France. He says in 2 weeks, I'll go to the most important. Actually, he's going to the tournament in France. I'm not sure if he is French, but he says he's going to the most important and his first tournament in France, 800 points, approximately 50 to 80 players, a 2-day event with 6 games. So that right off the bat is probably going to be competitive. I wonder if it's he likes playing. He likes, what is this, Isengard, and he wants our advice. So his first warband is Saruman with horse, with Grim Wormtongue, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with shield, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with pike, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with crossbow, 1 warg rider with shield and throwing spears, and 1 Crebain. Second warband is Lurtz with shield, with a similar makeup, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with shield, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with pike. Oh, there's a banner, 1 Uruk-hai warrior with banner and pike, 3 Uruk-hai warrior with crossbow, and 1 war rider with shield. And last, his third warband is Ugluk, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with shield, 4 Uruk-hai warrior with pike, and 3 Uruk-hai warrior with crossbows. So he has a lot of text in the bottom talking about his makeup of the warbands. I'm just going to skim over it real fast for the sake of time. Armando says in his first warband, he's thinking of, should he take Grima or should he not? Could he use those points in some other place? His second warband, he likes the diversity of the makeup of it, how they're shooting, of course, Lurtz with his deployment special abilities, and just the diversity of the warband makeup. And then on the last warband, he says although Gurov would be good, he wants to keep it, I guess, pure and Isengard. And he's wondering if Ugluk is a good decision or if he should switch to Vrasku or Maher. So I guess right off the bat, I like Saruman and Lurtz. Ugluk's good for strike, but I probably personally would prefer Vrasku because he could actually like put a little punch with heroic accuracy and all the crossbows. And then I have a question. Are the crossbows maxed out for this?
No.
Did anyone do the math?
They're not. There's 42 models. There's 4 heroes. So 38, you're looking at 13 crossbows, and he only has 10. So he's 3 down.
Okay, so he's 3 down, and he has 42 models total, 9 might. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess right off the bat, 42 models is good at probably your average at 800 with Saruman, Lurtz, and so forth. I would probably just right off the bat prefer a little more shielded Uruk-hai to stop them from dying so fast. Of course, 42 is good, but I'm all like, if it's not 60, it's not going to work. So yeah, basically I like Vrasku's role a little more for the army. I know Ugluk can have strike, but against an 800 point army, if it's competitive, you're going to see a lot of big boys that if you strike, you're going to probably die from them anyways, and you can't kill them like Boromir or Aragorn. So that's why I like Vrasku a little more, dehorsing things, shooting things, objective. He's a wonderful objective holder because he has like a crossbow, 3 might. So yeah, that's what I like. I also like my idea when it comes to Uruk-hai adding shield because it gives a little more of that D6, especially at 800 points with only 42. 42 models is good with Saruman. And like with your question on Grima Wormtongue, I would keep him. He's wonderful.
So I'm going to pose this to Evan and Matt. Are you guys sold on always including Saruman and Isengard? Or do you think that maybe it's better to keep him in there? What are your thoughts on Saruman?
You want to go first?
Yeah,
You
sure. I'll
first,
go.
Evan.
So I guess my opinion on Saruman is very, very mixed. I guess I'll say that first. At lower points, I don't think he has a place in Isengard. I think 800 points, maybe 700 if you're very adventurous, I think is the minimum to take him. Wizards aren't that great, to be totally honest, in this edition. Their whole Lichpin in the last edition was Sorcerer's Blast, and that has been completely neutered in many respects. He still does his job, though. He's good at taking out heroes. He's good at all those things that most casters can do. He can transfix. He can knock over some cavalry guys. He does his job. I think the main reason to take him, though, is Grima, which is why I'm definitely in the Rainier camp of take Grima. He's 25 points. Even if for some reason you don't get that might special rule, say he dies very early on or he's isolated, he still does stuff. You can deploy him on an objective and just sort of sit him there and be really annoying. You can basically get like an automatic lead in Reconnoiter, where as you run him on, you immediately run him back off and you get the 3 points, and now your opponent is super hard pressed to win against you. There's a lot of other objective scenarios that he's really good at. He just has so much utility for such low points that I think if you're taking Saruman, you should probably always be taking Grima. Just to put some reinforcement on Rainier's argument of Ugluk versus Verasku. Let's first.
Can I make a quick comment on that too, Evan, to kind of agree with you? Like, I think also at a competitive European tournament, you're going to see a lot of death bubbles of like high might death bubbles with lots of synergies, Lady of the Light, like Boromir, these different like things like that in a little place. Grima's really going to screw that over because they're going to have to double spend might. Sorry for interrupting, Devin, but like I agree with you.
That's absolutely true. Good point. So just to do the math on Ugluk versus Verasku really quickly, exact same combat profile. So the differences are Ugluk has heroic strike and heroic strength, and he has the head taker special rule. Verasku has a crossbow and heroic accuracy and the expert shot special rule, and they both have heroic march. Head taker is almost completely useless, generally in Isengard, but especially in this list because Saruman already has a 12-inch standfast that affects heroes. So you really don't need head taker at all. So all you're getting with Ugluk is the heroic strike, which can be valuable sometimes, but I'd argue is less so than the shoot value of 3-up crossbow that can shoot twice. So I'd say Verasku, even if you think it's somewhat redundant with Saruman being able to take out heroes too, Verasku can do so much damage from range that I think he's probably the better choice.
All right, so let's see. So there's 3 basic questions here. The questions are Saruman, Grima, and Verasku, basically Saruman, Grima, and Verasku. I am going to agree with everybody else on one point, and then I'm going to disagree with the other 2 folks on another point. So let's start with the point I agree on, and that's Grima. Yeah, Grima is a no-brainer. If you're taking Saruman at 800 points, you should definitely take Grima for all the reasons stated. He becomes, with some armies, he becomes an awful problem to deal with because you basically can't kill him, but he's always a problem to deal with, and he's almost always worth his points. Just kind of think about whether you're going to be deploying Grima with the opposing warband or with your own warband. When you deploy him, there are certain tactical situations when you want to do each one. In particular, situations where there are, kind of either objective scenarios or scenarios where Grima can grab stuff, and particularly in armies that can't kill him because they don't have magic. You may want to think of deploying him with your opponent's warband, recognizing that the other guy may dedicate 3 or 4 guys to kind of wall Grima in, but remember you've got Saruman to help him escape with his 18-inch compels. Sometimes it's worth doing, or alternatively you can put him behind your battle lines, but then of course he can be killed. So just think about which way you want to do him, but he's always worth the points. So Grima, I agree with everybody on. On Saruman, I think I agree with Evan, although I am, kind of, I'm more enthusiastic about Saruman at 800 points. I agree he's not worth it in a lower points game. At 800 points, if I'm playing Isengard, I'm playing Saruman. And I'm actually probably playing a list that looks very much like this one. This is the list that is very close to what I take. And I mean, Saruman's frankly he makes this list fun to play with, as opposed to a list that's just a bunch of brown guys that you're going to be pushing around the board and rolling dice when they get into combat, or rolling dice to hit with crossbows. Saruman is the guy who makes this list fun, because he can do things like pull enemy heroes out from the protection of that blinding light where the crossbows can skewer him. He's the guy who can transfix a critical hero so lurks can strike up and kill him. He's the guy who can do the nasty sorcerer's blast if somebody's left his banner unprotected, or a sorcerer's blast to knock the key hero off of his horse. He's the guy who makes this list tricksy, and I think it's much more fun to play with him. And I think it's going to take a little practice to kind of you're new at the game, so it's going to take some time before you can kind of use Saruman to his full potential. But until you practice with him for a while, you're never going to get to that point. So go ahead and practice with him and use this tournament as an opportunity to kind of take him and see what fun you can have with him. All right, so the Verascu Ugluk debate. My thought when I saw this list is, aha, he didn't fall into the Verascu trap. I have to say, just because I play against this list, I think more than I play it. Every time I see Verascu on the table, I'm like, ooh, free hero. And he got
by
every
by
time
free
I play
hero,
Verascu,
you mean like free hero to kill?
free hero to kill. He's easy meat. And because without the heroic strike, even when people try and hold him back, because you can't hold him back too far, or else it's too many might that's out of the fray. So he's got to be up somewhere near the front, and you can usually get either a heroic combat into him or get somebody into him. And once you get a hero with strike into Verascu, he's dead. And he often dies with his might, because he never had a chance to use it. So I think Verascu is kind of worth the points in a lower point list where there aren't that many killy heroes on horses around. But I think he's just a waste at 800 points, where there's going to be blinding light in just about everybody's army, and there's going to be a lot of heroes on horses that are going to be fight 6 that are going to eat him alive. So I would definitely go with Ugluk, because Ugluk is the other heroic striking threat, and he that's what you want. You want 2 heroic strikers at 800 points.
Well, let's use
good
that
point.
transition now. Sorry, Rainier, if you have something quickly to say, and then I want to
just
transition.
like as your dad was decapitating you and I. No, I like that in the sense too, and you bring up a good point too. If this is his first tournament, Verascu needs a little finesse. He's like got that like shooting hero syndrome where people hold him back and don't do anything with him, but he's also fight 5 with like strength 5, where he has to get into combat, he can kill stuff. So I like that. I kind of agree you in that sense too. when I kind of like think about this being his first tournament. And I also like how you said, like, have fun with it. Like, view this as your first tournament, not like 6 games to where, oh, I got to do good, but each game, take something you learned and apply it to the next game, then take something you learned from there and apply it to the next game. That's what I did when my first tournament at Nova. Like, I just used it as like an opportunity to learn.
So I think part of the reason why Rainier liked Vrasku so much is because he's basically a Corsair captain on steroids. Like,
Say
that
it,
is
Evan.
exactly what he is. He's 65 points. So if you're taking a Corsair captain with crossbow, which you always are, you don't really take any other option. He's 10 points more. You get +1 shoot value, +1 strength, +1 defense, +1 might point, and the ability to shoot twice. And all that for losing the throwing weapons, which you're not going to be getting.
Heroic accuracy too.
Yes, and
Like,
heroic
Lord
accuracy.
have mercy. Like,
So he is a shooty guy, and he will shoot guys. And whether or not he will shoot guys is often dictated by the meta that you're situated in, depending on how much blinding light you have, which transitions us very nicely into the other question he asked about whether or not he should max his crossbows. And I think that is almost entirely dependent, one, on the meta, and two, with what he wants out of the list. So he said that he wanted a lot of shields because he likes the defense 6. Isengard, unfortunately, now that their crossbowmen have lost the ability to function effectively with pikes, because if they take pikes, they get -1 in combat. They have to make trade-offs in order to make their army. They either have to sacrifice their shield wall portion by taking less shields. They could sacrifice their crossbow portion, which means that they have less crossbows, which obviously isn't that great. Or they could sacrifice on their pikes, and that means that they have less pikes, which means they'll have less opportunities to spear support people. And unfortunately, there is no really good way around this because, again, your crossbowmen can't take pikes. So you can't take all the shields you want. You can't take all the pikes you want, or you can't take all the crossbows you want. So it's really down to player preference which you pick. And I guess that's sort of where we ask you, do you see a lot of blinding light? Are those crossbows, are you able to use those crossbows in the majority of scenarios? And if you don't see a lot of blinding light, and if there are a lot of scenarios where you can use crossbows, then max out your bow limit. If not, then I'd say take less. Just take a couple to sit on objectives, shoot out a couple of spare people who are maybe trying to flank you or something like that. And focus on the shields and the pikes, make your battle line stronger. So
yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that's good advice. Maybe the one thing I would do to tweak this is maybe I would drop the throwing spear from the Warg Rider and take one of your Uruk-hai warriors with shield and upgrade it to a crossbow. But beyond that, I think my feeling is that you've got 10 crossbows in this list. I suspect that if 10 crossbows aren't enough, the number, basically more won't help. At least the more you will be able to pack into a list that also has Saruman and Grima in it aren't going to make a difference. I think 10's enough to put a credible shooting threat out there to somebody who doesn't have blinding light. If the guy does have blinding light, I don't think 3 more crossbows probably aren't going to move the needle. So that's probably good enough. And don't be afraid, by the way, to start using your, basically to put pikes behind crossbows. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's the difference between an Uruk-hai warrior with a crossbow and an Uruk-hai warrior with a shield is just one defense. And, sometimes that's good enough if you got a pike or two behind them.
Yeah. And And like I kind of like too how like your crossbows are distributed in the warband. I usually see a Mega Vrasky warband with crossbows and just destroys stuff, but I like that they're distributed. And I want to second Matt in saying like, yeah, like use the crossbows for combat. They're still strength 4 at fight 4. But one thing before we forget, should he mount Gleam or Wormtongue?
All right. So I guess pluses and minuses. Well, obviously, one big minus is you've got to jury rig a figure. And that's not terribly easy, especially given Grima's model. Unless you want to kind of go to the unreleased miniatures version. Minus number 2 is if you put Grima on a horse, he actually becomes vulnerable to spells that he isn't vulnerable to if he's not on a horse. And then minus number 3 is, sometimes it's easier to get out of those trapping situations if you have the smaller base. Obviously, the big bonus of putting on the horse is that he becomes harder to trap in other situations because he can outrun people. I'd have to say, because is it 10 points to put him on the horse?
10 points.
Yeah, 10 points.
Yeah.
I think if you have access to the figure, you might want to consider doing that, and just dropping a Rakai. But I don't think it's something where you're like you have to be in the position to say, "Ooh, I must go out and jury rig this figure because it's going to give me a decisive advantage."
Yeah, I mean it's good. Like I'm curious. Let us know how you do with the list at the tournament and stuff. Like I'm always curious, especially it's your first tournament. Like let us know what you learned at the event and stuff and so forth. Like I'm super curious too about just the French events in general. So before we start, I actually want to like shout out to Leon K for our first Ring Wraith episodes. He kind of ranked all of our rankings of the Ring Wraith in order of places where we put it. So I suggest that everybody kind of go check that out in his comments. Leon K, he kind of places like numerally like how good we ranked them in order. Yeah, looks like Tim's back.
I also want to do a shout out, and that was to, and I apologize. I don't have this comment to hand, so I don't know who exactly said this, but somebody pointed out that there is an FAQ that states that if you have a two-handed weapon and you cannot use the mounts, the mounts, natural abilities or whatever to fight with the mount and avoid the -1, so that the Dwemer Lake, if mounted on a fell beast under that FAQ, still gets a -1, in which case thou should never put him on a fell beast. And I strongly suspect that that FAQ was not intended for folks on fell beasts or folks on eagles or folks on monsters. But with that said, the way it is written, having parsed it out, looked at the definitions of cavalry and stuff like that, it certainly does cover them. So I think we have to consign the Dwemer Lake on fell beast route to the dung heap, because you don't want to put him on a fell beast and have him have a -1 in combat all the time.
Okay, so just further proves that I am correct with him at number 10. But anyway.
Now, I'm sorry, he's still not worse than the Knight of Umpire.
Okay, well, I can see that, I suppose. I could try to make a case for him, but I guess no.
Yeah, no, I'm willing to concede number 9 for him.
I'm willing to like switch him in the Tainted.
I mean,
but the Knight of Umbar deserves to like be retired. Like,
yeah. I mean, I will say this: I have actually done a list with the Dwemer Lake, not on a horse, not on a fell beast, and it was an amusing time. So, which I don't think anyone who takes the Knight of Umbar will be able to say. I think anybody who takes the Knight of Umbar, whether on fell beast, horse, or on foot, will just come away tearing their hair out.
All right, so we're going to go over the 3 profile models that actually just released, I believe, yesterday or today. I'm not really sure which one. But the first one we're going to release is the Knight of Dale. Let me pull it up real quick. So this is the profile that has just come out. So he is 11 points, which we were all kind of expecting him to be around 11 points. He's fight 4, strength 3, defense 6, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 4, heavy armor, spear, sword, and shield. He can swap the spear for a banner.
He
I'm
can
not
no
sure.
longer do so.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they changed the profile. I think that was a typo for some reason. Sorry,
Oh,
keep
okay.
going, Tim.
During the day today, they changed the profile.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Well, even if it was a thing, I'm not sure people would be swapping their spear for a banner, but maybe they
I
would.
don't think that was a change that would have affected anyone, but they did change it.
And of course, their special rule, which is why people will take them, is the model gains a +1 to wound when someone charges them. So it makes an interesting game dynamic. I'm going to go to Matt first. Any thoughts? Happy, not happy?
Yeah, so I guess I'm generally happy. I guess the first thing I would say is, for those of, depending on when you're listening to this and which order of episodes you're listening in, we actually did an episode where we kind of prefaced this based on the article that came out. So some of the things, if you end up listening to that, if you haven't listened to that yet, you may hear that later, and you may hear again some of the things I'm about to say now about the usefulness. Yeah, I think 11 points is probably about right for this guy. And he ended up in the episode where we kind of discussed the preview and what we supposed this guy would look like. He ended up looking like we supposed he would look. And I think he is appropriately pointed for somebody with this Wall of Blades rule. I mean, I think we were supposing he might have bodyguard, and it turned out he didn't. I think that's fine. I would certainly pay 11 points for this guy to put him at the front of the shield wall. I do have to say, I think an opportunity was lost on this Wall of Blades rule. I think a fun alternative would have been to allow this guy to get +1 to wound when spear supported, and then also have the spear support also get +1 to wounds. So, yeah, the point I made before when I was talking about this is a guy who appears to be an attempt to make a Greek phalanx type thing. He's even got kind of the Greek-esque horsehair plume on the top of his helmet, even though for those of you who are history nuts, he's actually got a Roman centurion's crosswise horsehair plume instead of the front to back one that you see on Greek hoplites. But his armor is kind of very reminiscent of Greek hoplites, even though his shield is wrong. And I think that's what they were trying to go for, was this kind of phalanx effects where you get this kind of wall of shields and spears that somebody impales himself on when they charge. And I have no problem with this. I think it's going to be a fun figure to do. I think it's appropriately costed 11 points. The only nit I have to pick with this is that I think this would have been more fun if this Wall of Blades rule gave you a benefit only if you were multi-ranked, and then gave you a bigger benefit. I think to really make the phalanx idea of this come alive.
So it wasn't necessarily if your support, you still had to be charged, in your opinion, right? To get that.
Yeah, you'd still have to be charged, but you wouldn't get this special rule unless you were spear supported. But if you got the special rule, both you and the spear support would get it.
Okay. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I think these guys are extremely spammable, to be honest. Like, I think like Huskarl's horrible. The Acolytes, maybe you can add a few or like a bit, but these guys, I'm not going to name any names. Rob Crom, somebody ordered 30 of them. So.
Yeah, I didn't order 30. I ordered 9, but I'm open to maybe getting more.
Yeah, like I think these guys are like really good, especially we're going to go over the heroes. Mm-hmm. And the heroes aren't that expensive either, too. Like,
well, that's what I was going to say.
A lot of these guys in. We're going to go over the hero of legend, hero of valor for the next 2 heroes we're going to talk about. And I don't know, just this whole army gives me a good version of Corsairs vibe, like a ton of like elite, semi-elite troops, but you can like spam out like around 50 to 60.
Now, one question I want to pose to you guys real quick. Do you find, because I know, Rainier, you said they're spammable, and I know that we had talked on one of the episodes about how we think there'll be a front rank kind of run, and probably won't see a back rank, but maybe people will do that. Do you think that we'll end up seeing a third bows still, knowing that their special rule is that they're basically elves? Or do you think we'll see less of them because of how good these guys actually are?
I think you'll see a third bow. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think you'll
because
see.
you'll make
I
them
think
charge.
if you didn't take what Rainier said, if you didn't take a third bows before, I think you're going to do that now because you want people to be charging towards you in order to get your Wall of Blades special rule. And if you don't have any bows, you're going to be charging your opponent, and you won't be getting that special rule.
Yeah,
Usage
the
wise,
last thing you want is to have an army of 30 of these guys and be facing a guy with like 5 bows, and you're like, oh crap, now I got to charge him.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, you're going to see what people do with wood elves and see bow and spear in the back of a lot, because you'll still get the 2 attacks. You'll still get the +1 to wound when they charge. Heck, we haven't even thought about if they're going to add any like legion rules to this too. Like, I'm curious what that's going to look like. But yeah, I think you're going to see bows and spears in the back. Yeah, as in like a ton of these guys for the front line, because it is 11 points for 1+ courage, and yeah, their defense 6 too. Like, that's not bad at all.
Maybe you guys have seen this army before. I've never seen this army before, and I think it's relatively fair to say this is not a common army that people see when playing the game. So it's kind of amazing how when you add 1, maybe 2 decent models to an army, everyone's now going to take this. And I just think it's a testament to how, if a model is good enough, people will buy it and will try to make it prevalent. So it's just really cool to see how Dale is coming into effect now.
Yeah, I think it fixes, like, because Marcus from my group used to play Dale all the time. And I think this fixes all of the weaknesses. When I played against Dale, I would just munch through the troops because they're defense 5. This guy's defense 6. And then, like, it's scary to attack them, and it makes the shooting even that much better. It's just, yeah, I think this guy's really good.
If I were to play this army, though, I got to be honest with you, I would put as many bows as humanly possible. And I mean, to have elf bows plus this ability, which I think is a great point of the synergy, where you shoot them, they come to you, and then you get the benefit of that. I think it's an amazing combination between the two of them.
Yeah, I think there's 2 reasons why we're probably going to see a lot more Dale. One of them is obviously these guys. The other one is, this is a bit of foreshadowing, but Rangers of Ithilien got nerfed, and Rangers of Ithilien basically outdid Dale in almost every way. Not only did they destroy them in a shooting war, but they had fight for troops that were very similar. And they had a mid-tier hero like Faramir and Girion, basically. And obviously, you probably want Faramir over Girion. And Rangers just sort of outdid them. And now that they've been nerfed, which we will cover later, I think Dale will definitely pop up some more. Usage for these guys, I think in a pure Dale list will be relatively high. I'm thinking 50%. If you can fork out the cash, 50% of a Dale army will probably include these guys. The rest of them will be spear supports, either bow spears or spear shields. I wouldn't use any of them as spear supports. I think they're just too inefficient points-wise for that, because you don't get the Wall of Blades. The only reason you'd really want these guys as spear supports is the defense 6, and you don't really need defense 6 for spear supports. As allies, I think they could be an interesting idea, using them as, say, front line for something like elves. Sounds interesting.
I kind of like the front line for wood elves idea.
Yeah.
Mm.
So anything with good shooting, I think Legolas might be really potent with these guys, because no one brings the opponent's army to you quite like Legolas does. Take, say, Legolas and Girion and a captain or something like that, and then a bunch of guys with bows and these guys, and you've got a bunch of elf bows that can shoot, and elves supporting your +1 to wound wall of blades, defense 6 guys in front. That sounds kind of scary.
Yeah, you could also take like a bunch of these guys and an Iron Hilt ballista.
Yep.
Nothing brings the enemy to you quicker than an Iron Hilt's ballista.
Indeed.
Yep. All right, so we'll move on to the first hero profile, which is Brand, King of Dale. He is 110 points, so it's not super expensive, but he's up there in the upper mid-tier range. He is fight movement 6, fight 5, strength 4, defense 7, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, courage 5, 3 might, 3 will, 1 fate. So Rainier, you were correct in one of our other episodes where he did die, so he only has 1 fate. He has heavy armor, sword, and shield. His heroic actions are strike, strength, and resolve. So basically, he has 1 heroic action, essentially, which is strike. He has an active special ability called Lord of Dale, where his stand fast is 12 inches. And he has another active ability called Stoic Fighter, where at the start of the fight involving Brand, check to see if he would be trapped. And if he's trapped, he gets another d6 to win the duel, and another d6 when rolling to wound, if that were the case. I do want to bring up at the bottom here, they say if this force contains King or Brand, King of Dale, or Bard II, Prince of Dale, then it may not also include Gary Lord of Dale. Additionally, ignore the allies matrix for the Garrison of Dale army list. Instead, they will be historical allies with Erebor reclaimed, so long as this list contains Dane Ironfoot, King under the Mountain, or Thorin III Stonehelm. And they will be convenient allies with the Dead of Diamond Harrow, Fangorn, the Fellowship, Fiefdoms, Halls of Thranduil, Lothlorien, Minas Tirith, the Misty Mountains, Rangers, Rivendell, Rohan, the Shire, and Druiden. Everything else will be impossible allies. So I'll go to Evan on this one first. What are your thoughts on Brand and the overall thoughts on the special rule I just read out? Well, not rule, but the way the ally matrix works.
Yeah. So the profile is decent. He's basically AMR with some less fate, who's a couple more points and has an increased stand fast, which, I mean, if you are a hero of legends or just like a king model, you basically always have that increased stand fast. There's so many models that have that. So that's nothing special. Stoic Fighter doesn't seem like it's going to happen a lot. Usually if your hero on foot is trapped, bad things are going to happen, and getting to re-roll the dual roll probably won't help you that much. So that's going to be super situational. So I don't think his profile is spectacular. It's not bad, though. The problem, though, is he doesn't have a horse. And we sort of knew that already because they never showed a model of him on horse. But not having a horse is not good. And being a fight 5 model that costs over 100 points that can't take a horse means very bad things for your hitting power. He is 3 attacks, strength 4, fight 5, which means that he is a worse fighter than Galadriel, Lady of Light, and her purpose isn't even really to fight. So I think he may have some struggles. On the other hand, though, he is a hero of legend, so he can lead a whole lot of troops. And I think the most important bit is they have a new set of allies, which means that Dale can now ally with Lord of the Rings era armies. Armies that you could ally with, or models that you could ally with, now include something like Minas Tirith, maybe. Fellowship is a big one. You can ally in Fellowship Boromir, which everybody loves doing that. Fiefdoms, all those sorts of Lord of the Rings era armies you can now ally into Dale, as long as you take either Brand or the model we're going to go and talk about next.
So here's an interesting question. Stoic Fighter. As I read the rule, if another hero on horse charges him, that triggers the Stoic Fighter rule. So Bran can re-roll one of his dice. Am I right about that? Because he would be trapped if he loses the die roll.
That would be right.
Which I think makes him an interesting. So there are heroes there are certain heroes in certain armies that I think that don't need to be on a horse. And I think Bran and his son, because of the way this army will now work with the Stoic Fighter, with the figures that we just talked about, where he's going to be in the middle of a phalanx. And
it kind of fits with our Corsair conversation where we said actually it's better that they're not mounted, so they can get into little avenues of attack and stuff and have some defensive maneuverability.
Matt,
and also said only one figure can fight him at a time. If he's in the middle of a phalanx, he can get charged by somebody else mounted, but that's going to give him effectively an extra die roll to win the duel roll. Plus he's got, so if he's standing next to a banner and he's got a spear behind him and he gets charged by somebody on a horse, he's effectively rolling 6 dice to win the combat.
Didn't we decide though, Matt, that technically if you were being supported, you could trap yourself technically anyway? So
there's an exception in the way this rule is written for that.
Okay, gotcha.
But if he's charged by a guy on a horse, he's still going to be trapped because he's going to be knocked down. And so I guess I'm less offended that he is not on a horse. I don't think it's that big a deal, because I think this is a guy that's kind of designed to fight on foot in the middle of a phalanx of spearmen. So I guess I'm okay with it. I'm curious, Evan, because you're the numbers guy in the family. I thought as I was looking at him that he was maybe slightly overcosted in comparison to peers.
Depends on which peer you're talking about.
It does.
If you're talking about Aemir, who is, I think, somewhat undercosted, yes, he is overcosted. Someone like Lurtz, I'd have to run the math.
Well, the closest one in comparison, in my opinion, is Shagrat, right? You look at the similarities between the two.
Shaggy is also undercosted. But yes, I think this guy is ever so slightly overcosted.
I think he's more like Ardavui, the King of Arnor. He gives me those kind of vibes.
Ardavui is 80 points, but
yeah, but doesn't Ardavui have 3 attacks, 2 wounds, I think, but 3 might.
2 will, and then
just
lower
this
defense.
This whole list is coming out to be more like an optimized Arnor.
I think if he was 100 points, I would be really happy. The 10 extra points. I know it's nitpicking at that point, but we're here to give our opinions on what we think. And I just think he's probably about 10 points overcosted, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you take it in allies, you're going to ally, I think, his son over him, because also the Hero of Legend is amazing in the sense you can spam out the warband, but also it's forcing you to take a 1 fate leader.
Yeah. I think some points were dumped onto Bran's profile to make him the Hero of Legend, and I'm not sure those were entirely worth it. But I don't think he's massively undercosted. I think he's probably the equivalent of 100 or perhaps 105.
I just compare him to Theoden in my head, and I know he's got a little bit better stats than Theoden, but I'd much rather have Theoden than him. And they do this.
Soledad.
Soledad's a weird exception where he's way too good, but
Soledad is undercosted in almost every perspective.
I compare him
this guy has some real advantages over Soledad he's defense 7 for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's good for the list. I feel like he's very good for the list because the defense 7, the horde aspect 2, you're not going to have to fight with him. You'll probably be out shooting everything else. So I don't think you're really going to get the leader wound with cheeky shots and stuff. So I like him, to be honest. Of course, I don't think he's overpowered or anything, but I like him for the list. He brings a little bit of that. like diversity.
Yeah. So just comparing him to Shagrat, because I think Tim brought this up. Keep in mind that Shagrat is quite undercosted, but the math goes, if Shagrat takes the shield and the heavy armor, which he always does, Shagrat's 5 points more. And for those 5 points, he loses out on a courage, gains a strength, gains 2 fate points, gets the ability to knock down the people he charges, and gets blood and glory. And Brand gets Lord of Dale and Stoic Fighter. So yes, Shagrat is better points wise.
The only benefit that you would take Brand over Shagrat in that regard is the 6 extra models you can take. Because I mean, I think it is a good point, right? Like the ability to take 18 models is a very good thing. Is it worth it over Shagrat? No, but the ability to take more per warband is a little bit underrated in my opinion.
Luckily, you will never ever be tossing in your head whether or not you should take Shagrat or Brand because they are not even in the same alignment.
I guess the better comparison is Theoden in my eyes then, because
the troops of what you get too. Like this guy can bring like a bow spam. This guy can bring like those 11-point dudes that are amazing. Mm-hmm. Like I think Shagrat too. Like he's great, but Mirandans and Black Numenorians are kind of like what you would maybe bring with him. Like this guy, I don't know. Just with the whole overall theme, you can spam out the list Corsair style.
Yeah, I mean it's an apples and oranges comparison. I mean, I will say the Warriors of Dale are, I think, worth it. I mean, they're good warriors. I mean, you can buy them with a shield for 8 points. You can buy them with a shield and a spear for 9 points, and they're a fight 4 model. There's something to be said for just. I mean, Dale was always kind of like half an army, right? Because it had the Warriors of Dale and it really had like nothing else. And now you've got these guys that are perfect for standing in front of the Warriors of Dale and giving them fight 6 in the front. So to a certain extent, it's kind of like the other half of the army. It may be that it's worth spending an extra 5 or 10 points to get Brand just so you can get a few more of these kind of really cost-effective warriors to fluff out the army.
We'll move on to the last profile, which is Bard II, Prince of Dale. He is 100 points. He is a hero of valor. He's fight 5, strength 4, defense 7, 3 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 6, 3 might, 2 will, 2 fate. He has a heavy armor, spear, sword, and shield. So he does have a spear. So if you want to support him, and you can. Heroic defense, strike, and resolve. So against me and Rainier talk about all the time, having strike and defense is a great combination, because if you go against something that can really do a lot of damage, you defense. If you want to fight something and kill something, you strike. And he also has special rule Wall of Blades. He gets +1 to wound when making strikes with the spear against the model that charged him. So if someone charges him, you fight with the spear, you get +1 to wound. I'll go to Rainier first. What are your thoughts on him?
I like this guy a lot, to be honest. Back to the thing, I like him better than his dad actually, because the heroic defense is just
You're
amazing.
Such an ageist, Rainier.
You know it. Like I hate old people in general. It's just horrible.
Yeah, I know. I can really feel the vibes coming off of you every time I sign on to this. It's like, oh, it's the old guy too. Again. I know. Yeah. You're like, okay, just... boomer. I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X. Give me a break.
No, but I like him a lot because he does have more of a defensive aspect than than King Brand. He's cheaper too. I know it's only 10 points, but I think that 10 points goes a long way. Being a hero of valor also is really good because he can lead 15 troops. Yeah, I don't know. Like I would really take this guy, and being a hero of valor too, you can ally him into a whole bunch of other different things. So yeah, I don't know. I just really like him. He's gonna kill stuff when he needs troops, stop mega heroes when he needs with his defense, and just survive in a shield wall. So again, it's kind of like a Corsair list. I see just these heroes as spamming out the models, like the warriors are what I actually think is the main like thing of this army. But they also do a lot, which I like them. And again, comparing them to Arnor, I think this is like a really optimized version of Arnor because you have elf bows that shoot like the Rangers of Arnor, plus higher defense. You have better courage models who are still going to be defense 6 to 5, and you have better heroes. So yeah, I just really like this.
Well,
Okay.
I wouldn't call this a better version of Arnor because it's missing what Arnor has that makes Arnor that gives Arnor its niche, which is the fact that warriors of Arnor are ridiculously overpowered. But that's an entirely different thing. Speaking of Bard, I think he's pretty good, honestly. I'm sort of underwhelmed by his father, but I think this guy is pretty decent. I really like the whole dynamic of Wall of Blades on a hero because usually if there's a hero on foot, what you do is you take one model, you charge them into that hero, preferably that model is defense 7, and you go, all right, you're either going to bounce off this guy or you're going to try and call a heroic combat, kill him, and then maybe get into an additional guy. And it basically stops the hero from doing anything he wants to do. And now that you have Wall of Blades, you're better able to deal with this. You're going to be wounding that hero more reliably. You can more reliably call a heroic combat and move on. And it sort of gives your opponent a trade-off. If they charge this guy, then he is going to be able to kill you faster. Other things to note, he does lose a wound compared to his father. So without heroic defense, he's going to be slightly less tankier. And he is a hero of valor. So compared to his father, he's missing out on 3 guys. But I think if I were to ally Dale, I would probably prefer him over his father.
I want to ask a quick question before we move on to the FAQ. If you were to come up against Bard, how would you deal with him? Would you still do the tactic which Evan talked about, which is to throw a guy or 2 into him just to hold him there, knowing that he gets the +1? Or does that kind of change the way you would play a game? So I'll go to Matt first.
So I mean, what you could do, assuming this guy's in a phalanx, is you could, and so you're fighting shield wall to shield wall. You could charge a guy into the person to the left of Bard the Second. You could charge somebody into somebody to the right of Bard the Second, and then you take one guy and you move up so he's like a hair more than 1 inch or exactly 1 inch away from Bard the Second himself in the middle. So that Bard's only option if he wants to get into combat would be to charge that guy because that guy still has a zone of control. And I mean, at least that way, Bard's got to charge that one guy, and he doesn't get the +1 to wound. I mean, that's another way to deal with him. I still think the best way to deal with Bard the Second and his Knights of Dale that will be on either side of him is to bring up a bunch of guys with throwing weapons 6 inches away and just start chucking at him until he's forced to charge.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, he still only is strength 4. He's not going to be like, he can kill stuff, but you do have quite a few heavy armored troops out, like armies out there, especially defense 7. I would just like box him in, like Matt said, focus on the troops to get those easier kills.
So Matt, remind me, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't there a rule where if you're charging 2 people in a control zone, you get to choose which one? So theoretically, couldn't he just go to the one on the right or the left, even though he's entering a control zone?
Nope, because the one on the right and the left that are already in combat don't have control zones.
Yeah, but I
The
thought
only
if you
control
enter a
zone-
control zone, you can still, as long as you're charging
Yeah,
somebody.
but the only control zone he would be entering would be the guy who is straight ahead, because he's the only
I
one
s-
who
okay,
still
I
has a
see
control
what I
zone.
see what you're saying. Okay, fair enough. All right, I think that's it for the Dale people. We'll move on to the new FAQ that came out. The way we're going to do this is we're going to start off with all the different things. I'll mention them out loud. If anybody wants to comment on them, they can. If not, we'll move on to the next one. So the first one up is the armies of the Hobbit Errata. And I believe there's just one here, which is the Iron Hills captain. He can change the first option to the following: may exchange war spear and shield for Matic for free.
It's free and it's still not worth it.
Yeah. It changed from useless to useless, but maybe I might take it for fun sometimes.
Yeah. It's basically, I can either to put it another way, you used to have to pay points to get this penalty. Now you can get this penalty for free. And you still don't want it.
Okay. We'll move on now to the armies of the Hobbit designer commentary. And the first one up is what happens if the driver of an Iron Hills chariot is paralyzed. The driver will be paralyzed as normal. Whilst the driver is paralyzed, the chariot cannot move. However, any friendly model also in the chariot that did not make a shooting attack that turn may attempt to aid the driver in recovering from the effects of the paralyzed magical power.
This is new.
That's interesting. Like, I think that actually makes Paralyze pretty effective because it's hard to roll a 6.
Yeah. So Paralyze got a couple boosts in this. And got a couple of very situational boosts, and this is one of them.
If Azog is riding the White Warg and is affected by the Panic Steed magical power, will the White Warg remain on the board thanks to its Raging Beast special rule? Yes.
Okay,
Makes
so
sense.
this, I mean, actually, it doesn't. This is the opposite of the way that the rule actually reads as written.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I actually don't have a problem. This was something that always bugged me about the way the rule was written, was that the White Warg would run away, and Azog is no longer intensely vulnerable to Panic Steed. So I think this is the right outcome, but this is another errata in disguise of an FAQ.
Yeah, Azog players no longer sweat profusely when they see Radagast across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that if you had Azog and Radagast showed up, it's like, all right, well, I guess I'm dismounting. And now you don't have to do that.
Okay. The next one is what happens if Grinna uses Swap With Me to swap with the Goblin King, who is in combat with multiple enemy models, but due to his smaller base size, Grinna cannot be placed in a base contact with all the same models. In this unusual situation, I love how they had to add that, Grinna will be placed as close to the center of where the Goblin King was. Grinna will still count as being in combat with all the same models as the Goblin King was originally, even though he is not in base contact with them all.
All right. I've never seen this happen before. I guess it's a very slight nerf to Grinna. But I'm glad they clarified this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one of the main rules of having Grinna around, was that if the Goblin King ever got into a situation where, he was going to get ganged up on and go down, Grinna would, be able to jump in front of the Goblin King and go, no! And now they've kind of clarified what happens when that occurs.
When Grinna uses Swap With Me to swap places with the Goblin King, does the Goblin King's base have to be placed centrally over where Grinna's base was? No, though the Goblin King must still be placed so that his base covers all the area that Grinna's base took up.
Okay.
All right. Does the contraption holding the Goblin Scribe count as part of the model when working out whether or not model has line of sight to the Goblin Scribe? Yes. This is an exception to the usual rules regarding scenery on the base of a model.
That is interesting. And we'll make it, I guess, a bit harder for the Goblin Scribe to kind of hide from shooting and siege engines and all that. So that's a slight nerf to the Goblin Scribe, but I think one we can live with.
Yep. Can a model with Chittering Horde special rule make special strikes when supporting? No. That is actually a very important FAQ, believe it or not.
Yeah, because you're gonna all those piercing strike people that want to like piercing strike from the back.
Let me put all my axes in the back, and even though they're defense 3, I don't suffer any minuses.
I'm fairly sure this was always how it was interpreted, but it was a little bit of a gray area. So we did see people doing that sometimes. So I'm glad it's clarified officially.
Yep.
Okay. And the last one, or last two, I should say. Is Smog a battlefield target or siege target? A battlefield target.
All right. Well, so I think this was absolutely necessary because if he's a siege target, then siege weapons like the black arrow from the whatever
Windlands.
that the windlands would only do 1 point of damage to him a turn. But boy is this siege target versus battlefield target an odd mechanic, because now the Mumak is a siege target, but Smaug, who's bigger, is a battlefield target. I don't get it, but all right.
All right. Can Smog be immobilized, transfixed? Yes. All right. Next one is
I don't think there was ever really any doubt about that, but okay.
Armies of Lord of the Rings official errata. First up, we have the Blackguard of Barad-dûr. Options: change the following: exchange shield for banner. Okay, why? just why? Why did they do this?
Because of the model.
I know, but come on. I mean, like nobody.
They wanted to keep it. I mean, no one was going to take a banner on the Blackguard, anyways. But in case you do, the model you have is now correct. Is it the greatest thing in the world? No. I would have preferred they just left it like that, because it doesn't really make sense, because you're losing something that's 1 point and you're still paying the full 25 points.
Yes.
But that's how they do it for every other elite model that has to drop its shield or spear. I don't like it, but it's how it is.
Okay. Finally, page 164, Warg Marauder. Add the Cave Dweller special rule to the Moria Goblin Riders.
Makes
Oh,
sense.
thank God they finally made this change.
Yeah, I
don't know how many
I was
times
about to quit the game.
I know, me too.
I haven't bothered.
This was really the change that, yeah, I think was probably the reason behind this whole FAQ. I think the rest of it's irrelevant. But now
we're
the
back up.
Warg Riders are back to being cave dwellers. Thank God.
Woo. All right, and now we're on to the designer's commentary. The first one is: whilst mounted on Treebeard, can Merry and Pippin still throw stones if Treebeard is engaged in combat? Yes. So even if they're fighting, you can still throw stones. Next one is: when Merry and Pippin throw stones when mounted on Treebeard, where is the distance measured from? From Treebeard's base. So again, good thing for them. Are models that are being used as the bludgeon during the bludgeon brutal power attack still considered to be in base contact with any models that they were in base contact with before the brutal power attack took place? No.
So what's the point of that one? Is the point of that one so that you can pick up a banner bearer or pick up somebody who is next to a banner bearer?
That's probably right. I assume it was something to do with banners.
That makes sense.
I'm sure that's important for some reason.
The one person that's ever used bludgeon.
Yeah.
Hey, I've used bludgeon. Not with a banner.
There you go.
All right. If Gulavar
nothing's more fun, by the way, than picking up a hero with bludgeon and using that hero to bludgeon all of the warriors around him and kill that hero too. It may not be the most effective way to do it, but boy, is it fun.
If Gulavar is already wounded and slays an enemy model in combat before making all of his strikes, does he regain wounds and therefore attacks immediately and can therefore use them in the same combat? No. Gulavar will only regain wounds by slaying models at the end of the combat he is involved in. So someone tried to be a little cheeky there. All right.
But read the next one.
Yep. If Gulavar suffers any wounds whilst making attacks, such as from Haldir's One Final Blow special rule or Sharku's Riding Dagger, which results in its wounds being reduced, will its attacks be reduced, making any more strikes? If Gulavar is making its strikes all in one go, then this will have no effect on the number of attacks Gulavar makes. However, if Gulavar makes its strikes individually and has its wounds reduced before its final before it has finished making all the strikes, then its attacks will immediately be reduced. This may result in Gulliver having to immediately stop making strikes.
Can somebody explain to me
interesting.
why the same principle was not used to answer both questions?
They like being difficult. Why not?
Oh, wait, I see it all now. It's so simple. No, wait, it's needlessly complicated.
I honestly have no idea what just happened. As you were reading, I was like, "What?"
Basically, they wanted, like, I don't know. It's just so.
No,
if
it makes sense. Like if Haldir like
Yeah.
strikes you, like your wounds go down. But like what Matt said, like if you read it in conjunction with the first one,
Yeah.
I'm just confused. Like I guess I'll just like flip it out at an event and be
Yeah,
like,
this-
Tio, can you translate this?
This strikes me as like flowy version 2 over here, like two very, very, very specific special rules on two very specific models interact in this very confusing way that we've never seen before. I feel like it would have been easier to just say that Haldir's strikes happen at the end of the fight phase and be done with it, but I guess this is a thing that exists now.
Yeah. So this is the classic example of these things are sufficiently obscure that you could have just come up with one rule to cover all situations, but now we have to remember two different rules to cover a myriad of different situations. And I mean, guys, come on, can we just default toward the simple here when it doesn't really, let's face it, it doesn't affect the game.
What about that
Yeah.
1.001% chance of it happening now? I mean, all
Yeah.
things
Yeah, there
considered.
must be some like strange shenanigans going on in the UK.
Every
We're like,
single
wait, what?
scenario that could come up is coming up, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't mind if we cover the weird scenarios that come up, but could we at least cover them consistently so we don't have to remember like which situation breaks in which direction?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway.
Oh, here's a watcher one for you, Matt.
I was just
Yep.
going to say, Matt, this is going to affect your watcher play. Can the watcher in the water use might to increase its roll to arrive on the board? Or it's from the deep special rule? No. Matt, thoughts?
Yeah, I always assumed that was the case since it's not one of the things that's specified.
Okay. If the Balrog or the Watcher in the water hits a model with a Fiery Lash or Tentacle special rule, respectively, and by dragging them into combat by the shortest possible route, would also put the dragged model into base contact with another friendly model, will that friendly model also count as being in combat with the dragged model? Yes.
Ooh, bats.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this is the bat special rule. So I had a discussion, I think it was with Leon Curry, who said that the way the Germans have ruled this situation in the past is that the bats would not end up being in the combat, therefore you would not get the having of the fight value. We went through and we kind of parsed through the rules, and I couldn't figure out how the German interpretation could be squared with the way the rules actually read. And Leon was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, but that's how German refs rule it." But this has definitively taken the German interpretation off the board. So
Okay.
Yeah,
I think this memorializes what the rules actually say, but at least it's clear.
Mhm.
Matt, I know you're not going to be happy about this next one, because it's basically the same thing. If the
Yeah.
Watcher in the water suffers any wounds while it's making attacks, such from Haldur's
Tim, you
one-
don't need to read this. It's
All right,
the
it's the
exact
same-
same thing as
Yeah, that's fine.
Gullivar. It's
Evan's
it's
like,
Haldir,
please save
it's
us.
Haldir and Gullivar. When he does the strikes, you have to specify whether you're striking him one at a time or not. And it's the same dang ruling that could have been fixed much easier, but whatever.
Yeah, that's right. The other interpretation would have been much simpler and would not have changed the game one whit, but no, we're going to do it the complicated way. Okay.
Rainier, this is going to affect you now.
Ooh.
Can a Condish chariot be knocked prone via this bash special strike? Yes. So all those points you pay for a chariot, bye-bye.
That's good. There goes by a Hobbish militia. Like, "Bop."
That
I
plucky
like how
little
he's like
Moranin.
he's like this small compared to the chariot and the guys here, but somehow he like Naruto's it and like jumps and "Wacha!" knocks him off his chariot. That's good.
Well, I'll be honest with you, though. The one that would scare me if I was running Condish chariot would be Moranins, because they do have a maul as an option.
Oh,
so
do
they could-
interesting.
They could
Yeah.
bash at strength 4.
I'd be afraid of what is it? Shoot, what are they called? Wizards, to be honest, because you can
Yeah,
throw Chariot
wizards.
into a wizard to try to like
Oh,
dehorse them
they
or kill them,
stun.
and then they could just
They stun. They don't
oh they
bash.
stun.
Yeah,
They
they
don't
stun.
bash.
What I'm really thinking about is Dwalin, who can probably
Oh,
just be like a chariot killing machine. Like every time he fights one, he just knocks it off because he's got +1 for the two-handed and he's got strength 5. So he's almost always successful with knocking them down.
You
Rainier,
need
honestly,
you need a
No,
hammer
I'm still
for
scared.
this.
I'm still
Yes.
scared of the Hobbit
A
sheriffs.
hammer or a mace, I think.
Rainier,
Well,
that's gotta be kind of annoying though. If you took like a Condish king and you paid all those points for the chariot and then bye and one
Well,
will
I
go.
think it
Well,
helps that the
the
Condish
Hobbit-
Kings and Chariots are like 5/5, so like that does help. But like on the offshoot that like you do roll like pretty bad, you can literally have like a Hobbit sheriff be like,
Yep.
"Shkata."
don't the Hobbit sheriff stun too?
Oh, do they too? Look, I'm just like messing up rules all left and right.
The Hobbit militia do have access to hammers, I'm fairly
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's that.
Yeah.
There's a Hobbit militia figure that has a hammer.
Yeah.
the 3-point or 4-point model.
I'm not gonna lie to you though. When I take Morannons, I genuinely take like 2 or 3 with bat that can bash for this exact reason though. Not conned, but like the ability to knock someone off, something like that, because they can bash.
Oh, Grim
Now, would-
Hammers. Grim
Yeah, Grim
Hammers are a
Hammer.
big one because they can go two-handed. They're probably strength 4 because of Thror. So they have a decent chance. And they win ties because they're the basher, the person that
Yeah.
bashes wins
I wonder
ties.
if this like applies to other chariots too. Can you like knock off like a
Yeah, it is
Iron
kind of
Hills
weird that
chariot.
they specifically say Condish chariot rather than
yeah? That's again like they answer something and it creates more.
Yeah. So I think the Iron Hills chariots have a special rule that says that they can never be knocked prone.
I was gonna say, can you imagine if you took one of that 375 point model, you just bash and get lucky, and the next thing you know, you lose the whole thing.
Well, I mean, you
He's
also
so
have weird
funny.
dynamics because there's multiple people on the chariot and you can't bash them all.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Okay. So I mean,
yeah,
it's
because it says can be knocked prone. And I'm pretty sure that the Iron Hills chariots cannot be knocked prone. Period. Which
okay.
the Condish chariots do not have.
All right. So con gets a little bit weaker there. If a model with the Impaler special rule charges a cavalry model and kills the mount on the charge, will it now gain the cavalry charge bonus that is now fighting against an infantry model? No, as the model initially charged a cavalry model.
Oh, that's weird. So
Well, I
then
mean,
if
it
you
makes sense.
it does, but like I would imagine like I guess so. So like if a camel
You would
like,
think they would try to give that advantage, though.
yeah,
to-
because it's like so much momentum and stuff, and the guy falls off. But I guess it also, if they roll poorly and they're on the floor, you get double attacks anyways because they're trapped.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
interesting. It's good to clarify that though.
If a model with a Pavis is hit by an impact hit, such as from a War Beast, Chariot, or a model with the Impaler rule, does it still gain the defense bonus from the Pavis? Yes. So Rainier's happy.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really good though for like the arbalisters. Like
Yeah.
that's
But-
really good. Like that means they're defense 6 when it comes to all those special like different things.
By the way, for the Iron Hills chariot, I just looked this up. Hiding at the bottom of the large war machine special rule, which is amongst the like 8 special rules this thing has, the very last sentence is the chariot cannot be barged, hurled, or knocked prone for any reason. So I think that solves the
Okay.
bash problem.
All right. We'll move on to the next one, which is battle companies. I guess we can go over that real quick. There's a couple little things if you
Yeah,
like
so I guess
battle.
that's a game we play.
I'm
You
gonna
guys
be
just-
honest. I didn't read this FAQ, but
Yeah, I didn't.
let's
either.
go over it.
All right, we'll
To
go
be
over
honest,
it.
I didn't read any of the FAQ.
We're getting live reactions. That's the point.
Yeah,
We're doing
exactly.
this. It's tactically planned.
Exactly. Or I'm just lazy, but I don't know.
If the rider of a cavalry model is slain, but their mount stays on the board, will the model still gain experience points for any kills subsequently made by the mount? Yes.
All right, moving on.
Yep. If one of a member of a Vault Warren team dies, can another member of the battle company be upgraded to replace them? No.
Okay.
Can a cave troll purchase a troll chain as it has one of its profile? If so, how many influence points will it cost to buy one? Yes, it will cost the same as a normal throwing weapon from the armory. And do Corsair Reavers treat the leader and sergeants as a bosun for the purpose of the mindless killer special rule? Yes. So for
Okay,
anybody that's
then.
into battle
Moving on.
companies, yes.
Yeah. I'm
So
sure
there
some
you go for all
people
the
were,
26
were
people that
very
play.
happy about this. I'm sure they
We all
really
play it all the
enjoyed
time.
Well, I mean, we have played it. The game has a place, but it's not really what this podcast is about.
I mean, this one right here is the biggest one.
Yeah,
of
this is the one that likes the biggest change, but also
Yep.
it's the one that makes the most sense. So
this is one that people have been praying for. Maybe not this exact way, but
This is the one that the people who don't play Rangers of Ithilien have been praying for.
Yes. All right, Rangers of Ithilien. Additional rules. Replace the second bullet point with the following. A Rangers of Ithilien list force must always include Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol. So no more getting a bunch of Rangers necessarily. You can still get a bunch, but not at lower points.
Yeah, I think you see like a whole bunch of people freaking out about this. I saw a post in the GBHL where someone was like, I painted this whole army and now they destroyed it. I'm like, just paint 3 more models. I don't think it's that big of it. It makes it like psycho good to just good.
It is a big deal, right? Because, and here's why, this is not scalable. What I think I would have preferred to have seen would be something where it says like, in armies of 400 points or less, you have to take Frodo. In armies of like 400 to 600 points, you have to take Frodo and Sam. And armies of 600 points or above, you have to take Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. And now you have to take Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, and that's like what is it, Evan? It's like 160 points.
Frodo's 85, Sam is 45, Smeagol is 30. So that's be around 160 points.
So that's 20 Rangers right there. And that's a big chunk of points at lower points levels.
Do you think it's crazy? Do you think they did on purpose though, because they don't want to see it at lower points levels? I don't know what the craziness that the UK saw.
Rangers were the lower the points level you got, the more broken Rangers were. So like at 400, 300-ish points, they were completely unbeatable. Now they aren't that great at that level. At like the 600 point range, they were very, very, very good. Now they're kind of mediocre. At 700 points plus, they aren't very good, and they are still not very good. So
I suspect there's a lot of players in the UK right now who are frantically changing their Articon armies.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, this probably totally, even like those who like built against this.
Can you imagine you went out and bought this for that tournament, and the next thing you know, you just basically almost wasted your money, essentially?
Yeah.
I feel like it was like a long way.
I'm not saying it didn't need to happen. I'm just saying that it's just unfortunate for those people who happen to buy it wanting to play it like it is.
Kind of like that last Articon when it was like they nerfed Nature's Wrath right before the event too. It just changed a lot of dynamics of lists.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if anyone wants a good laugh, go and look at the Warhammer community article where they talk about these FAQs, and Jay goes into the explanation of why they did this. And his explanation, the explanation that he gave, essentially boils down to, well, we were really upset that we created this wonderful legion that, as a matter of theme, should have Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol in it, but nobody was taking them. So we decided to make you take them. That was the rationalization. It was there was nothing.
We boiled all these vegetables, they created a broken, and I thought you would eat them, but you're not eating them. Now you have to eat these vegetables.
Yeah, that's right. And no, I mean, you could just, you're sitting there reading this, and you're just seeing the little lights, flimsy rationalization in progress, going off as you read this. It really is kind of funny to.
Well, looking at this on the bright side, you will now finally see Smeagol in a Rangers of Ithilien list, because Smeagol is complete and utter garbage, and the only way you would possibly get him in a Rangers of Ithilien list is if you're forced to take him. So yay, Smeagol is in a Rangers of Ithilien.
You know what
list.
I imagine this kind of is? It's like if the clouds of Mordor kind of parted and the sun starts hitting so everybody's just really happy at 500 points. now where they're like, oh my God, I can see the light again.
Now I'm waiting for the future FAQs that require you to take Peregrine Took Knight of the Tower in a Minas Tirith list that has like more than a dozen Fountain Court Guard in it.
If you want to take Gandalf the White, you have to take Pippin from now on.
Well, boy, then you'd never see Gandalf.
Hey, that's what I'm saying. They'll do something like that.
You already don't
release.
We modeled him with Pippin. Nobody's using him, so we had to figure out a way to get him there.
You didn't give us a rule for using him. Give us a rule for using him. I'll use him.
So the ramifications of this Rangers of Ithilien nerf are practically non-existent at higher points. At like 800 to 1,000, you were never really worried about them anyways. At lower points, they are extreme. I think blinding light and very high defense are going to be a lot less necessary at lower points. I think Corsairs are going to be doing a whole heck of a lot better now that their main competition is gone. Because, I mean, the whole thing with Corsairs is they're very good at low points, but Rangers of Ithilien used to outshoot them. And
I
that
think
was
Dale
Yeah.
too, like Dale and Battle of the Five
Yes.
Armies are going to do pretty good too, because you can I mean, you said it, Tim, in a previous episode, the list you played against in New Jersey, like, I was like, holy smokes, like that's a lot of shooting at 600 with good tools.
I have to say though, he did take a very themey list, so he didn't take all Rangers. He took, I believe, Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol.
Oh no,
So-
I'm talking about the Army of Lake Town.
Oh, that one, yes.
Erebor,
Oh, okay.
Erebor, yeah, like that Battle of the Five Armies. Like you can still, I think Dale's going to be really good because now Dale isn't going to be shot out by anything unless it's like Errata or Corsairs.
Well, assuming you keep the bonus, because I mean, the whole point, right, is that you get that elven bonus to them, right? Now, that's not to say that strength 3 at a 4+ is bad, but when you're able to take elven bows for their points, it's pretty unbelievable. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Gondor at War Designer's Commentary. Ingold's Resolve Fighter states that he does not back away. Does this mean that he is immune to the barge brutal power attack? No. If Ingold is barged, he will still back away as described in the brutal power attack. This is an exception to the Resolute Fighter special rule that states Ingold never backs away.
So they fixed the wrong part of Ingold's Resolute Fighter special rule. But I guess his rule has now been overridden for the specific case of barge. Jury's still out on whether or not he is automatically trapped if he has a model behind him because he can't make way. But I guess that won't be clarified.
Yeah. So this is at this point, I'm a little unclear as to what Ingold's Resolute Fighter rule actually accomplishes.
Yeah, because they say he can be trapped now. Like each time they're like, no, he can't actually
Yeah.
do that.
I love the way you
Like,
said
he
that.
can't actually do that.
I love the way you say it. You're like, at this point, I really don't know why they made the rule.
He should just rename it to Fighter.
It accomplishes one thing, and that is you get shield wall on your Warriors of Minas Tirith in combat if you have Fight Force Spear supports that don't have shield wall. Other than that, you can sort of sit on objectives a little better, but that's
Yeah.
really it.
I mean, as far as I can tell, this rule basically has collapsed down to Resolute Fighter means that Ingold doesn't back away unless he is required to back away.
All right.
In which case he backs away.
Match play guide. We have 2 questions. If a cavalry model is on top of an objective marker in the destroy the supply scenario and then loses their mount and does not roll a 6 on the Throne Rider chart, can they still destroy the objective marker during the end phase? No.
Okay.
That's good clarification.
Can a prone model destroy an objective marker in the destroy the supply scenario? No.
So I just answered the first. They're like, here's clarification.
Well, see, here's part 1 and here's part 2.
Yep.
All right.
So what do we got next?
Next, we've got the Middle Earth Games Rule Manual. firing the siege engine. Change the last line of the paragraph to read, note, if a model involved in a fight is hit by a siege engine shot, then determine which model in the fight is hit by the initial shot in the same way as a normal shooting attack.
Interesting.
Hey, can you scroll back
Yep.
up again? I want to make sure I thought I understood this, and then as you just said it, I'm not sure I do.
So would that mean that everybody's not affected? Or does that just mean the initial hit?
No, so the initial, so I think the way this rules is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is if you shoot into a combat with a siege weapon, you do good versus evil, 1, 2, 3, or enemy versus friendly, or however you want to do it. 1, 2, 3, your own guy gets hit. 4, 5, 6, the other guy gets hit, or if you do it good versus evil, however you're going to do it. And then I presume that if your opponent's model gets hit, then it's the guy that you shot at. If it is your own model that gets hit, it's the guy that's closest to the shooter. Is that how it gets played out?
I think that makes the most sense. But yeah, it's a little,
So I think that's how you do it with a normal shooting attack. So
yeah. All right, so we'll say that that's the way we're interpreting it.
yeah, we'll say that's how.
Even though it's it's supposed to answer the question, we got more questions. So
yeah, but I think that is how it works.
Okay. Next, we're into the designer's commentary for the game's rule manual. We have if a special rule allows a model to reroll multiple dice, such as a Bane of Kings, does this model have to reroll all their dice together, or can they reroll some dice, see the results, and then reroll the rest? If a single special rule allows a model to reroll multiple dice, they must reroll all of them together. However, if a model is able to re-roll multiple dice from multiple different special rules, then they may do so individually. Remember, you can never re-roll a re-roll.
So wait, so a Hasharan, if he has 3 attacks, and if he wants to re-roll one of them, he has to re-roll all 3?
Yeah.
No, I think the same thing. All right. So I think the way this reads is, so if you have Bane of Kings, so you've got, say, Betrayer on Fellbeast or whatever, and he goes in and he's gonna roll his 3 attacks. Say he wounds with one of them. He doesn't re-roll that one. He fails to wound with 2 of them. He re-rolls both of those. And he has to re-roll both of those.
So if he needs a 6 to wound, he rolls, let's say, a 6, 5, and a 2. He can't say, I'm only going to re-roll the 2. I have to re-roll the 5 and the 2.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I guess the reason for that is what you just stated, right? Because what he could do is he could say, I don't want to re-roll the 5.
To see if he wants to mite it up.
Yeah.
I can mite that one up.
Or perhaps you want to, let's say you got into one of those weird situations where you don't need to kill the model, and they might just say, well, I'm fine leaving it as is, kind of a thing. So I don't know. I think maybe, yeah. I like the way Matt put it, actually, probably better, because you could just choose not to re-roll. So actually, that makes more sense.
That's good. Now, clarification too, can he use Bane of Kings whilst on Fellbeast? I've heard yes and no.
Well, because he would have to make the strikes because it's his thing. So I think it's no.
King says the model, though.
Yeah.
When the model makes
Does
strikes.
it say that? Does
the
that
Fellbeast is part of the model, so
Yes,
I
it is.
assume it re-rolls.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why the heck does that rule exist on
Do
him?
me a favor.
Yeah,
Someone look up the exact wording just so we can be
All right.
positive on that.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Do cavalry models gain any bonuses for charging when in deep water? No.
Makes sense.
I have never played cavalry on a
Has
board
anyone
with deep
played
water
deep
in my
water?
life.
Has anyone played deep water before?
In specific narrative scenarios, yes, but
I was
think
once at a
it's-
Historicon where I saw them playing
I'm on Hen.
the Ammon Hen scenario where they had like a river there that they counted as deep water. I think that's the only time I've ever
Lurtz
seen it.
drown swimming.
I think he did.
He tried to
his
swim
shield,
out
probably.
after the hobbits on a raft and he drowned.
I think the problem was he did not actually have a raft. all he had was his shield, which he found out did
No,
not
I
float.
mean the hobbits were on a raft and he did not have
Oh.
a raft.
Yeah, you're right.
But yes, him not having a raft is also part of the problem because he did eventually drown.
All right. What happens if the commander of a war beast is paralyzed? The commander will be paralyzed as normal. Once the commander is paralyzed, the war beast cannot move. However, any friendly model in the Howdah that did not make a shooting attack that turn may attempt to aid the commander in recovering from the effects of the paralyzed magical power.
So same thing with the chariot, basically.
Yep. This is the other
How-
buff to paralyze.
In the world does that work on the Mumak? Because
you
your
have- you
guys
have
can
12
move
guys.
freely on the
Didn't
Mumak. So can
someone
they just
post-
can they reach with their like extendo hands and like touch the other person and
Yeah,
say
it's kind of like the
hey,
Hobbit
hey,
with
buddy,
the
it's gonna
bash.
be better. I mean,
What-
this
what-
this usually doesn't matter because I think the barrel white has to get like
Within
right
6
up in
inches,
the Mumak's
yeah.
face to get within 6 inches of the
I-
driver, but still, it
I-
makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think the only way this actually occurs is if the Mumak is like walking next to a building that happens to have a barrow weight on its roof.
Yeah, well, or Mirkwood spiders, I guess, because
Well,
of their range.
Yeah,
the
theirs
other
is
thing
8
is
inches, so it's technically possible.
the other thing is what was I going to say? The great beast of Gorgoroth,
Hmm.
to whom a barrow white could get close to.
Mhm.
All right. So the Bane of Kings special rule. This model must re-roll all failed to wound rolls when making strikes in close combat. And if you look, if I'm going to go off of memory here, but I believe it's page 17 of the rule book defines the model to include the mount.
Unless it's Black Dart.
Interesting
it's
question
Black
though
Dart.
on the unless it's Black Dart, but then again, the rule book also defines. Never mind. All right, we're not going to get started on that again.
Oh, we're gonna trigger everybody.
Yeah, but here's an interesting thing. If you spend the might on the die roll, then it's not a failed to wound roll. I'm not sure that the FAQ actually answers the question of if you might the 5 to a 6, must you re-roll the 5?
Well, I think it's also interesting though that, and this is the point I was trying to make before. It says you must re-roll it, not you can re-roll. You know what I mean? So if you didn't want to kill a model, let's say you had just broken someone and you didn't need the game to end at that exact moment, then you have to re-roll. So
Yeah. I would think the situations where you like want to inflict 1 wound but not 2 are
Yes.
going to be few and far between.
Well,
but,
yes, it's not very often, but I have had games exactly like that before. So there are moments where that does come into effect.
All right.
If an
Take your word for it, Tim.
If an unengaged hero model with a spear declared a heroic action in the fight phase, such as a heroic strike or heroic defense, and then subsequently charged in the fight phase, can they still support? No, a model that declared a heroic action in the fight phase cannot support.
This is
Sense.
decently big, I think. Because I know a strategy with a couple of heroes with spears was to stick them behind a model and call a heroic strike in order to get their fight value higher than like a monster, and it would keep them out of danger.
Well,
basically.
there's actually something in the rules that says you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you got no benefit from the strike if you were supporting. I think is what the
What
rules
is a
say.
model that has a spear that can strike?
An Iron Hills captain.
Iron Hills
They
Captain?
can't
Oh
strike.
no, they
That-
can't strike anymore. They used to be able to strike.
Well,
That's where
no,
it came
they
up.
technically can. If
Free to
they
tall spear, I
master of
think,
battle
Can
on a
Marden?
5-up a
That's true,
heroic
if they
strike
master
from
battle,
another
you're right.
hero.
Can Marden strike?
No.
Martin, no, he cannot. What
He
about
can-
free
he
to
can
tall
heroic
spear,
strength.
and then the new brand?
Frida cannot strike.
Oh, the Brand will be a
Brand
good one.
can.
Yep.
Brand can.
But does
That's
that mean
bad
I don't think
strike.
he would do that? But does that mean if he's behind, he cannot strike to use his?
He couldn't strike or defense
Correct.
and then support.
Another interesting application of
Interesting.
this
He
is
could
if your
defense.
hero
Well,
has
no,
a
it's a-
spear and is in combat and calls a
Oh, yeah,
heroic
that's-
combat, they cannot then go in spear support to aid in a fight.
Yes.
That
Say-
is actually significant.
Say if that
Yeah,
hero
it's
is
pretty
higher
big.
fight than another hero, and
Oh,
there's
that's
no way of
interesting.
getting into combat except by spear supporting, you can no longer do that. So you
Yep.
can't spear support with a hero that calls a heroic combat after the heroic combat.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good point though, right? Like, because Gilgalad's that's a spear, right?
Oh yeah, Gilgalad. That's the main use of that.
Right.
You could use him as a fight 9 spear support. You can't do that after heroic combat anymore.
Interesting.
Although
So
I have to say this is one where I was always puzzled why this was, because it doesn't strike me as making any sense practically, because I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to, like, whatever a heroic strike is, and it's not clear to me. I know what a heroic strike is in reality, but it wasn't clear to me why you couldn't do it from a support position rather than being the guy in front. And it also made no sense. I mean, if it also made no sense from a simplicity point of view either, because it was an exception to the normal rule, and exceptions are by necessity complications. So I didn't understand what the rationale was for saying that you couldn't have a guy with a spear strike to get the fight value up, but this is, I guess, equally puzzling. I don't know why. I don't know why this layering of complication was placed on the game.
all right, but yeah, no, it's a good point, Evan. It's actually pretty important knowing that models cannot call any heroic, and that's the thing. It's not just strike; it's any heroic action.
Yep, you're right.
Be a part of the fight. All right, good to know for the future. Can an invisible model declare heroic actions? Yes. However, as their allies cannot see the invisible model cannot call the likes of with me, take aim, or any action that would allow friendly models to join the heroic action. The invisible model may still declare heroic combat, but other friendly models may not move as part of the successful heroic combat.
This is also another significant change.
Yeah, kind of Isildur, kind of Sauron. Well, not Sauron, but Isildur is an interesting one.
There's lots of situations where this comes up, like Gollum and the Goblin King. Frodo, when he's calling a heroic action, that used to be a thing where you'd go in and you'd move like a ring bearer in, the ring bearer would call the heroic combat, and somebody else, and the guy who was fighting with would call the strike, and then they'd kill the guy they were fighting, move on, and take out some other hero in the game. So
this is actually pretty big when it comes to that.
Well, I guess for some instances it's less useful because Isildur and the Goblin King are fight infinity. So I guess what it changes now would be that the Goblin King would now have to call the heroic combat instead of Gollum, and Isildur would have to either fight with another hero or just say, you know what, you guys can just stay there. I'm going to go and waddle on by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was reading this rule. I don't really understand this one at all. Can a flying model cast its magical power as it's flying over models? Will it need to land in order to cast a magical power? The model will need to land in order to cast a magical power, though they may still continue to move after casting a fable. So what, are they just hovering the model above something? Like, I don't understand.
So that was
People
a thing.
have done this.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah,
people would go, I'm moving 6 inches, I'm going to be above this thing there, and then I'm going to move 6 inches back. I think my father and I used to play it like this until it was either FAQ'd or we tried to do it at Articon and it got ruled against us.
It was common for that.
So someone would just hold the model above the models and just
last
no, they'd
it
move
was
it and
either,
they'd be like, I'm going to cast this as I move this model over here. I'm casting compel, or I'm casting certain things.
I think this was FAQ'd last edition, and apparently it was not left in the game. So now they had to FAQ it for this edition as well.
Yep. So the issue here, just so people understand what's going on, is that if you have a flying model, you can only cast spells from places on the board where you could actually balance the figure. So if you're like kind of flying over a battle line and you would be on top of, a couple models, you'd be in a place on top of a couple models where you want to cast a spell, you can't actually cast it from there. So if you're really sneaky and you're playing against like a ring wraith on a fell beast, and you kind of spread out your models in kind of a no-fly zone, it is sometimes possible to protect a critical figure from a spell by just preventing the ring wraith from being being able to get close enough to cast that spell. In particular, like the 6-inch spells, like the Shadow Lord's Black Dart and the Undying's Black Dart, things like that.
If a supporting model is in range of a banner, but no other friendly models in the same fight are in range, does that fight benefit from the effects of a banner? Yes. I mean,
Yeah, I think we knew this, but
Yeah, I
I
think
guess
this
they
was-
clarified it.
yeah. Okay. Do cavalry models gain any bonuses for charging when immobilized transfixed? No. If a cavalry model is targeted by the Shroud of Shadows magical power, and then both rider and mount are subsequently separated that turn with the mounts staying on the board, are both models still affected by the magical power? Yes.
By the way, just to go back to that whole cavalry model, not being not getting their charge bonuses from being immobilized or transfixed, it seems like it would never happen, but it can be important in some situations. Say after a heroic march, let's say you have a ring wraith on fell beast and you're compelling a cavalry model. You can't charge because you heroic march, so the ring wraith on fell beast has to compel the cavalry model into itself. So you're going from 2 attacks on the ring wraith on fell beast against 2 if the cavalry model got their charge bonus when you compelled them into you, compared to just 1 now because you no longer get the charge bonus. I have also seen some pretty horrible stuff happen where a monstrous mount of some sort has been compelled into a hero on horse and has then knocked that hero on horse off their horse after they won the combat. So this is actually significant.
Do you think that, I know it says do cavalry mod, do you think they should apply to monstrous cavalry as well?
I'm fairly sure they technically count as cavalry
Monstrous
models.
cavalry are cavalry.
Okay, so it applies to both. That's fine. Is the Howdah of a Mumek a siege target or a battlefield target? A siege target.
This is actually important. At least it's important if you play Mumex. This was so back in the previous edition, the Howdah was specified to be a battlefield target, which meant that if you hit it with a siege engine, it was destroyed immediately, and everybody in the Howdah fell off, and the Mumak was, or whatever, whatever war beast this was effectively emasculated. In the current edition, they deleted the reference to it being a battlefield target, but did not replace it with anything. So nobody knew whether it was a battlefield target or a siege target, which meant that you had, a huge debate whenever you hit somebody's Howdah on a Mumak with a siege weapon. Now it has been resolved. It's a siege target. That means if you hit this thing with a siege weapon, you'll only do 1 wound. And I think these things have like 4 or 5 wounds. So effectively, you're never going to destroy it with a siege weapon. I mean, I guess, yeah. The other thing is, because it's a siege target, if you hit it with a siege weapon that has an area effect, it used to be if it was a battlefield target, you hit it and then everybody who was standing on it took a strength 5 hit. Now, because it's a siege target, the area effect does not apply, because you only get the area effect when you hit a battlefield target. So if you hit the Howdah, it's now basically kind of like a wasted shot.
Okay. If a catapult shoots at and hits a war beast, does it need to make an in the way roll for the Howdah? Yes, as the shot will be coming from above.
Okay.
Yeah, that adds a little extra protection to the Great Beast of Gorgoroth from catapult shots.
Yep.
Other than that, the Mumak doesn't care.
All right.
Right, because it's a siege target being protected by another siege target.
Yep.
Last question. When Sheila uses her she is always hungry special rule, does she gain the reroll for the remainder of the game, or just until the end of the turn? Until the end of the turn.
Boy, that would be neat if she could get it for the end of the game.
Definitely would.
Yeah.
All right, that is our Q&A. Thank you for tuning into this episode.
FAQ.
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 Q&A, they both have Q in it. Doesn't matter. And
Yep.
A.
Well, I mean, in your defense, Tim, I mean, at least you're consistent because whenever we do a Q&A episode, you call it an FAQ episode.
See,
But
again, they both have Q&A. They both the same thing. There's only, thank you for tuning in, though. Leave any lists you'd like to be reviewed in future episodes, as well as anything you'd like for us to speak about. And let us know if you enjoyed the Q&A. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
bye, everybody.